Om. Today, I think I must speak of the difficulties. The difficulties inside of ourselves. Most people think only of the difficulties outside, the obstacles outside to what we would like to happen in our lives or in the world. Actually, we have to look inside first, because there are the main difficulties we have to start with. The situation in the world is a reflection, the result of the situation inside our beings. As humanity as a whole, and perhaps in those short videos I'm trying to make since a few weeks, I may have looked like, sounded like everything was easy. Everything was only bliss, delight. It is not so. I am only speaking now in such a way because I know there is no real usefulness in insisting on the obstacles, on the difficulties within ourselves and elsewhere. What we must do instead of that, even though we are aware of the difficulties, it's not that we must be blind. But to be aware that this is only a passing phase. And to keep our consciousness towards the future, towards the reaffirmation again and again at each moment of our life of our true being, of the true reality that must re-emerge more and more and transform more and more what we see in ourselves and outside of ourselves as well. So while I may sound to some a bit like some kind of guru, I want to reassure all of you, I'm not. And I don't need to. Your true guru is from within you. And even if you happen to resonate broadly with what I am saying, or others are saying, it is always better that you keep for your own use only what you truly resonate with, what you think applies to you, to your life, or at least what you want to try for your own experience of it. Again, as I have been saying, I think in all my videos, whether in French or in English, we are all unique expressions of the divine. And in the same way, the exact path we will follow, each of us, for evolution back to our divine state, so as to express it more and more also here in this physical world. This specific path each of us will take will never be exactly the same as somebody else's path. The broad avenues we will follow might be the same ones, but even within those broad avenues, each one will have a special journey. And this is how it is interesting, because we really have to look for it ourselves. We can take advice from others, we can listen, we can see, but finally, we have to make our own decisions, even when the voice of our very soul from within speaks to us. Finally, we have to decide what to do at each moment, whether to follow that voice or to follow that more strident or more forceful other voice also speaking from within, and which, because it sounds so loud or so authoritarian, so sure of itself, we believe it must be the truth. Or sometimes we know very well which voice from within ourselves is the true one. But we lack the willpower, the inner strength to resist those inner voices that are trying to lead us through other paths. So anyway, the whole exercise of being on earth in those bodies is to see how the inner truth in each of us will find its own way back through that maze of appearances. For the time being, a distorted version of the true reality. So we are all actually trying for the victory of the real thing in us, so that it leads us more and more to the discovery of the true joy, the full happiness for all the parts of our being, including our outer nature, our mind, our life force, our emotional being, and our physical body. All of it has to find its true satisfaction, its true way even of functioning. But there are all those obstacles in between us and that divine version of ourselves that we are approximating kind of more and more. But what to do about those obstacles? What to do about these defects that very soon we are able to perceive in ourselves, in our own nature? But we don't know how to deal with them. It seems to be a kind of impossibility to change the habits of each part of our nature, especially as usually we consciously start anything like a yoga, a process of awakening, only when we are a so-called adult, which means actually mostly a being in whom habits have already hardened enough to give a kind of pretense of true identity, of true consciousness, of true action, of true power. When actually it's not true at all, but in the eyes of others who are in the same diminished consciousness as we are, it looks that way. And most of us fall into that same trap. But even when we start growing aware that we are missing the point, that we are missing the true happiness, we are missing entirely the true truth, the more we think we are fighting for it in the world, the more we encounter, we are faced with whatever inside ourselves wants just to stay the way it is, because it has come to believe that it is the right way, because of education, because of society. We are full of beliefs about what is right, what we should do, our responsibilities, our duties, the true way of being, the true way supposedly of worshipping supposedly the divine. When maybe even the idea of worshipping can in itself be misleading to some extent, because we all are part of the divine. And the worship finally must discover that too. And relate to the divine in a different way, in which we are included too, in the divinity manifested that is trying to bloom more fully now on us, through all of us. So you have always to check if your worship is not actually a way to avoid becoming more divine yourself. It is for the Christians, particularly, a big step to come to realize and accept that we are parts of the divine and meant to manifest the divine, and that it is not blasphemous to even think such a thing. I remember when I discovered in that Catholic religion, which I used to know only at first, during the first part of my life until young adulthood. The people who were celebrated as saints were human beings who most often had found their inner relationship of love for the divine. And as long as what their books and their talks were only about that, adoration of the divine, with all the due distance between the divine and you, everything was all right. And you were a saint, and the church would celebrate you. But if too naively, you would also blurt out that actually there were moments when you even felt like you were part of the divine. You were in the divine itself, and everything was, or anything like that. All the celebration was over, and your life as well. And you were burnt on the stake as well as your books, because you had dared to utter such a blasphemous thing. I never understood for my part how we were supposed to be children of God, and at the same time to be allowed only that kind of relationship to it, like to a stern father. And everything was based, I found out when I grew up, on a fear of God, which, thanks to the divine grace, I had never been made to experience myself during my childhood and youth. But as a young adult, I discovered so I was so happy to discover, on the other hand, that in Asia, and particularly in India, there were also mystics, as also the Sufis from the Muslim world. But in India, it was absolutely normal to also, as they say here, realize the divine and realize the true knowledge, essential knowledge, that we are the divine, an expression of the divine here. So for long, nobody could understand at all why the divine was expressing itself here. So the idea seemed to be mostly to get out of here as quickly as possible. But at least there were several ways of approaching the divine. And what they call here jnana yoga was perfectly normal and not at all blasphemous. And it is what actually the very word yoga means. For it means simply union, reunion. You know, like when two things are brought together again, which actually are one, but have been separated. So the whole principle of yoga means that you are reuniting with the divine. I know for the Western mentality, this is a bit much. But I believe more and more also in the West. All these limits are opening up a little. People start understanding a little more than what the religious, too limiting and fearful dogmas have been presenting to them, which is not necessarily what the original great being, like that religion, tried to continue. It is not necessarily the present beliefs and dogmas, what was actually taught or expressed, and even less lived by those great beings. But precisely because for the time being, we are still into the mental era of evolution on Earth. Everything has been hardened into boxes. And they started. So this is the time when all this has to change. Because all these terrible beliefs are actually what keeps separating us from the divine and from our own truth from within. Some other was saying quite clearly that as long as people have that concept of the divine separate from the so-called creatures, and in a way humiliating them, wanting that kind of fearful adoration and obedience, as long as that concept of the divine was prevalent, the people who still accepted it had no way to come out of that. So in India, the door is still wide open for wider conception. And one can freely and without fear take up what is called here yoga. Now, most people will imagine immediately, because again, this is what has mostly transpired about yoga in the West. Either you are supposed to meditate, and that is supposed to be yoga. If you don't meditate, you don't do yoga. Or it is through the body, through the asanas, through the postures, through pranayama, and only through that also, that you are supposed to do yoga. Well, the word yoga is much more all-encompassing. And it may very well mean doing also your normal activities of the day, but in a different inner attitude, where you offer all those activities quietly to the divine in you, the divine in everything. So that through those activities, you grow inwardly. And that very aspiration and that very offering, joyous offering on your part, will actually make you grow, indeed, more and more towards the truth of your being. But essentially, the yoga is simply an approach to help you reunite with what you really are deep within, which is the divine. So how to deal with the difficulties, with everything in us, which is not only unable to express yet the secret divinity which it is hiding for the time being. But not even able to conceive of such a thing. For many parts in ourselves, you see, are inside their habits, like people inside a closed little house, more or less without windows and practically without doors, simply repeating the habits that they have learned to believe were the right thing to do. And the more we continue to believe that we simply are little human beings, that means totally insignificant thinking animals, lost there on this insignificant little planet Earth. inside a gigantic cosmos that will anyway disappear. As long as these are the kind of beliefs we maintain, feed ourselves on, and think are the true reality, the more we actually imprison ourselves in that kind of reality. Now, experiences which may happen totally unexpectedly in our lives are like suddenly some windows opening here, there, which suddenly show to us something else than what we believed we knew. It shows us suddenly that the reality is bigger than what we thought, more beautiful. We may feel a love that we didn't know it even existed, a delight that words cannot even express. What do we do when such things open up? Most people will become very afraid. Too much light, too much space, too much unknown. They will, as quickly as they can, close back whatever has opened up and retreat back into their usual life and try to forget about what has happened and try to put some scientific name to explain it away. But some other people, once they have had a taste of that unknown, of that light, of that love, of that space, of that immenseness, wow, my goodness. All that is there, and I had no idea about it. And they cannot forget about it, and they won't. And the rest of their life will be to find the way to get those windows to open again, to find the door. Maybe the doors that can lead us into that outside reality. That's the only difference. Our reaction to the hints that are given to us, to all of us, in various ways, depending on what might be likely to succeed, depending on each of us personality. So the opportunities are there for everybody. But it is our choice how we will react to them and what we will do to them. What we will do with those opportunities. Allow them to start changing our lives or quickly retreating back inside our shell of beliefs, even if we are not happy at all within that shell. But that's what we think we know. So it's the only relative safety that we have learned that perhaps we can count a little bit on. So as you see, I'm not mocking anybody's reaction. You see, my own inner growth has taught me mostly one thing: to forget about the judgmental attitude of the mind and to be ever more full of compassion. And yet, let everyone do as they choose. That's their right. That's their challenge. That's their adventure on earth. And I'm not there to try to live them for them. So the only thing I'm trying to do through these little videos is to share the testimony of what happened for me, in which way, and what helped me to go on. And then, if you will make use of some of it or not, or maybe much later, who knows, you see. What I'm saying might be also just a seed that some of you listening now to me may totally forget about. And then maybe in 5 years, in 10 years, suddenly you are facing the situation, and out of nowhere, out of the blue, comes back something that I said long ago, that you heard me say, and which suddenly then takes up its full meaning and its full possible use in your own life. So I'm doing this, which is a very challenging job for me, I can tell you, in many ways, simply because it seems that what the divine in me and permeating everything is telling me to do. It's like the conductor, you see. You know, in big orchestras, you have all the musicians, each one ready to play whatever part they are ready to play. But then there's a conductor to tell to each one, now you play your part, and now you, and now you. So it seems that for some reason, for the whole of what is happening right now on this planet, my participation is required in this way. So I do it as best I can. But I can reassure you with no pretense. Even if I may be more advanced, like people say, on some aspects of my own evolutive work, some other people listening to me might have progressed already more on some defects that they have in common with me than I have been able to do. So who can say who is more advanced? We all are complex beings. Each human being is made actually of so many parts, usually warring within ourselves. Hence our difficulty to make those choices. So what to do? I come back to my first interrogation, starting this specific video. What to do with the defects we become aware that we have, and which might be considered extremely serious by other people when they are so visible, so obvious that even the other people become aware of those defects in us. Most of the time, long before we ourselves really admit, accept to see that we have those problems. The feeling of shame is not helping really. It is more helpful and true to realize that everybody has defects. Nobody is perfect, even the one who pretend to. And the reason for that is very simple. We come here to do a work. To transform back those defects, whatever they are in our specific personality, to transform them back into the true quality that they are potentially. A little bit, as those mirrors. I don't know the name in English for that, but it's funny when you see it, but you see when those mirrors that don't mirror correctly the image of you. It's so funny to see yourself suddenly much bigger or much thinner and longer, whatever distortion is there. But actually, our present way of being inside, as compared to the actual beauty of what is within, which is trying to manifest itself in the world. It is a bit like those distorting mirrors. So we better keep our sense of humor about ourselves and know that it is not forever, that we came here precisely to do that work, to take up all these usual common human defects, problems of all kinds, and offer them to the divine, to the light, to the love, so that they are transformed back into the real truth. That they originated from, and will now be able to express truly. I have found just yesterday, I hope I can find it again quickly on my cell phone. Yes, It is from a group of other disciples of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. In India, there are many, many of these groups, and it is so nice to read. So this one quotation from the mother that they shared yesterday was this. I read it aloud. It's a short quote. And then there's a nice photo of the mother also, which I will try to show you on the screen. But the quotation from mother is this, which I felt would be very nice with the contents of this talk, which already yesterday I was feeling so strongly needed to be spoken out. This is what Mother was saying. Let us offer our falsehood to the divine so that he may change it to joyous truth. I don't know if this will show at all. Yeah, at least in this position, it seems to reflect a bit. Thank you, Mother, to confirm so nicely what I felt the need to say today. So you see, I'm not getting desperate about my defects. And the simple reason is that over the years, some of these defects have greatly diminished. When I was wondering at the beginning, my goodness, how this problem or that problem is ever going to disappear. So this is a way when we are really tired of having a certain difficulty, a certain problem. We give it in all simplicity. We ask the divine, please do the necessary for this. I am so fed up with behaving in that way, in responding to this situation, that situation, in that. And then gradually, with that help that we have asked for, finally, in all simplicity, what needs to be done with these defects gets done. And then one day, you certainly look. And that defect is almost disappeared. So that is such an encouragement. And then you cannot despair anymore, you see, because you know, if you ask with the simplicity of a child who simply wants to outgrow these stupid limitations, these stupid habits, the divine being and underlying everything will help you and will make it disappear from your life. Because you will have learned that lesson and you don't need anymore to be presented with it. So the main thing I'm trying to say to anyone now listening Don't focus too much on your defects. It doesn't help. You harden around them. They became almost your own identity, which is not true. This is not what you are. It is only a passing phase. And what your being wants really to manifest. And you will find a way to heal that in yourself, which was preventing it to be closer to the real truth of your being. You see, the mindfulness is basically to experience that, the joy of progress, more or less constant progress. And each moment, each situation gives us some opportunity of some growth, some victory, as compared simply to what we were able to do, to be the minute before, the day before. And this is the joy of the spirit. So I wish all of us many joyous progresses, the way the mother described them are different. Turn back into the joyous truth that they were meant to manifest. Om.